Okay, we are live on another edition of the Edlow podcast. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. The cool thing about having a podcast is I get to talk to my heroes and I get to talk to a lot of people who I just idolized growing up and I get to let people tell their stories and kind of help, hopefully help other people. And this is one that I've looked forward to for a really long time. I have Buff the Stuff, Buff Bagwell. Just
What's
well, what
going
should
on, brother?
what should I call you?
That's a great. You started off with a great question. My real name is Marcus Alexander Bagwell, and I got into wrestling. Well, back up, Marcus Alexander Bagwell, and throughout my from kindergarten to graduation, my name was Mark Bagwell. So when I got in trouble, I got called Marcus. So I didn't like the word Marcus because I got in trouble a lot. Well, I get into wrestling, and of all things, Dusty Rhodes hires me and wants to use my real name. And I'm like, Dusty, man, no, that's not cool. Please, I want to be the Terminator, the Equalizer. I wanted some kind of gimmick. I wanted a gimmick. And he's like, no, no, no. My partner was Too Cold Scorpio
Right.
and Marcus Alexander Bagwell. It was horrible. I hated it. Well, so with the name, it was Marcus. So I won my very first match against oh my God. I'll come back up with it in a minute. My brain went brain dead here. Rip Rogers. I won
Oh
my
wow.
very first match ever, and we had a guy named Rhubarb Jones that was the ring announcer, and I'll never forget it. He said, and the winner of the match is Mark Alexander Bagwell. And with the whole name, Marcus sounds a lot better. So I went to Dusty. I go, Dusty, if you're going to do it, call me Marcus. And he rips his headset off and goes, you mean your real name's Marcus? And I said, yeah. And he goes, that's a lot better. And I was like,
Nice.
oh my God. So from that point on, wrestlers called me Marcus. But if I heard Mark, and to this day, if I hear, hey, Mark, at the airport, that's somebody that knows me.
Okay.
So I like Mark, to be honest with you.
All right. Well, then I'll call you Mark because now I know you. So that's
There you
good.
go.
All right. So well, Mark, let me ask you. That's an interesting thing. I'm surprised that they wanted to use your real name because you've always been a body guy. You know what I
Dude,
mean?
always. And keep in mind, and I came in with Johnny B. Bad and Too Cold Scorpio and the Enforcer and the Total Package and Macho Man. Dude, Marcus Alexander, come on. My parents loved it, and I hated it.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about that too, I wonder because I would say your fame. I mean, you were always a good act, but you really kind of became really over when you became Buff Bagwell in
Yes.
WCW. So do you think the fact that you didn't kind of have a gimmick, you were just kind of another guy? I mean, you were in the American Males. You had a good run as a tag guy,
Yeah.
but it was really when you kind of turned to the NWO, became Buff Bagwell
Yeah.
where you really started actually, I mean, as a singles act, being a draw.
Yeah, absolutely. That's no doubt about it. It was said perfectly. And I feel like American Males was the next step to being what I was looking for, which was Buff. I knew at a very early age, and God, everything happens for a reason. But I'm actually a licensed massage therapist. When my parents went broke in 1988, I went to the Atlanta School of Massage to get the first degree toward maybe some sports medicine or sports therapy. I wanted to be some kind of sports trainer. Sports is all I knew. So my parents go broke. Like all of a sudden, no time to plan for it. I'm graduating, nowhere to go. So this was the first plan of attack for me, was a massage therapist. In that massage therapy, I learned a horrible thing that was going to be very negative, and that was women did not want to be massaged by a good-looking guy that's in shape. They were very self-conscious. They'll talk a big game, but when it really comes down to walking in that room and taking their stuff off and getting under the sheet, they really were very uncomfortable, to the point I had zero women clientele. So at about the 6-month mark of doing this business called massage therapy, it was really starting to become very negative for me because I didn't have the women clientele. Fast forward, Missy Hyatt sees me, gets me into wrestling. I'm Marcus Alexander Bagwell, and the women love me, and the men don't.
Yeah.
So here I am, kind of in the same problem, but opposite sexes on this. So I'm like, you got to be kidding me, man. I dealt with this with massage. Now I'm dealing with this. So not really knowing it, I create Buff Bagwell just because that's who I wanted to be. And it won over both men and women. The men thought I was cool and the women thought I was still good looking. So it worked with the men and women. A couple could be there and they both could engage to the character Buff Bagwell because I portrayed a part that was for both of them. I was cool for a dude and I was good looking for the women. It was a good combination and it really came across great. So when I did create the Buff character, it really did, finally put me on the map as a draw.
It's interesting. So back then when you were creating the Buff character, you hear a lot of stories, like sometimes people are just given gimmicks, like, Dusty says, hey, just use your real name. So how did it come about that you became Buff Bagwell? Did you go to like Eric Bischoff and say, this is what I want to do? And he said, run with it? Or how did it work?
How it works is I didn't get any, I remember nobody's ever asked me that. That's a great question, but I never got approval or anything for it. I did have some trouble getting them to call me Buff. That I wanted to be, you very seldom see, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. You see The Rock, Stone Cold, Sting, Luger, Macho Man, Hulk. I wanted to be Buff, but they would not do it. They said, we'll call you Marcus Buff Bagwell. And I was like, come on, man. And they wouldn't do it. But the Buff character came when the NWO happened. I knew it was time to switch gears. I needed to switch gears and I wanted some kind of character. And I can't remember the names we were thinking of, but we were in first class. I remember that because it was that's when the curtains still got drawn before 9/11. The little curtains there, and we're in first class, and me and Lex were up there talking and everything. And in the back of first class, in the shadows, I remember a voice going, "What about Buff?" And I can't remember the names we were coming up with, but me and Luger just stopped, and we were like, we looked, and in the shadows, it was Nick Patrick. And he goes, "What about Buff?" And me and Lex went, "Buff Bagwell." That's it. No, we didn't say nothing else. I got straight home, airbrushed everything Buff, and there we were off. And then Buff is the stuff, and the girls can't get enough. And oh my God, it just kept going.
Man, so let me ask you, when you're going through that, because you hear a lot of stories about WCW and a lot of people not wanting other people to get over. What was your experience as you started getting over with the NWO with all the other guys in the back?
It just comes like if Marcus Alexander Bagwell says something in a locker room, it don't really get viewed. You just have to be more careful how you speak because now when you speak, people are listening. And I didn't get taught that. And Lex kind of taught me it after I kind of fell in my own mud. I didn't do anything wrong. Now people were listening. And so me saying something like, man, that match sucked. Marcus Bagwell saying that, nobody cares. Hey, Buff Bagwell said your match sucked, and then, whoa, so you got to be careful once your name becomes something because people are listening.
Did you notice though, when, it's funny because a lot of people kind of bag on the NWO because, the top guys, Hogan, Nash, Hall, everybody felt like they were keeping people down. But man, like Conan got over with the NWO. I mean, there's a lot of guys who their credibility went up quite a bit by joining. So it's kind of hard for me, even like the Giant, right? I mean, Big Show, he joined them and he got bigger too. So, what was your experience there? Did a lot of people a lot of the other guys get annoyed that you were getting kind of the push and did you feel like Hogan and all those guys kind of accepted you?
Another great question. I've never been asked that. So the answer is, man, they let me do my thing. I mean, you would think that they would. I mean, the first thing I did, and I didn't ask anybody about it, we have NWO shirts. We're a team, right? We're supposed to look the same, but I put Buff on the back of my shirt. Nobody else did it, but I did. And I think it made a difference. I mean, every time you can see your name, it helps. I mean, Hulk wears Hulkamania shirts, Hulk, you know, Hulk. I mean, total package. You wear your stuff, they see your name. And that was a big deal because that was kind of a little bit me making myself different. I didn't mess with the NWO front, but I had Buff on the back. And then it was, you know, a do-rag. And then it was the top hats and the backward Kango. So I had a little something, I thought, to make myself a little bit different, but not once did it get anybody upset or mad or anything. And that's another thing why I wanted to be in good shape, is because I wanted to differentiate myself. I mean, keep in mind, really tough class here. You got Steiner, you got Luger, you got all these body guys, and you know, and I look good too, but it's just a lot of guys that look good. So it was they never held me back. They pushed for me. They always were like, you know, even Scott Hall was always, you should come out with some really cool poses. And Scott Hall was the one that told me about my calves. I had small calves and my boots were tight at the bottom. He goes, you don't look symmetrical. So that's why I came up with that bigger boot to make me look symmetrical on TV. So all the guys helped and wanted people to succeed in the NWO for sure.
Yeah, wow. So now you've had a pretty long career, as I told you off the air. Like I remember you from even when you were doing the handsome stranger gimmick, you know,
Right.
where people didn't quite see your face, and there was always kind of an angle where someone was trying to take off your mask and stuff like that, which was kind of cool. Do you have a time of your career where you would look at that and say, man, like those are the good old days. Those are that's my favorite part of my career. That was the most fun.
Well, it's definitely not in the beginning. I had a horrible time in the beginning. I really had a tough time with this thing, man. People have no idea how tough this sport is. They've got no idea. From top to bottom, it's without a shadow of a doubt the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And I've done every sport, from football to baseball to boxing to tennis to, I mean, we had tennis courts at my house growing up. We were athletic people, but this was different. It was, I have seen people in pro wrestling actually, you know, that couldn't throw a football, that were fantastic wrestlers, and guys that could throw a 100-yard touchdown pass, not be able to run the ropes. It's a different kind of animal. It really is. From the toughness to the ability to the acting to the looks to the talk, from top to bottom, my number one guy is The Rock, top to bottom. And that's what, if you put yourself up against The Rock, a lot of guys are going to fall short, because The Rock to me is number one. So, but with that said, there was not a time, there is a time, but it was not in the beginning. I had a really tough time with this, getting a hang of it. I would say Handsome Stranger is a great memory, because that's when I really started majorly figuring it out. I had a real tough time at North Georgia as Fabian. And then I showed up to Handsome Stranger in Global, which, by the way, we were excited about that too. We thought Global was going to be the next federation. I mean, it was going to be the WWF, it was going to be WCW, and it was going to be Global. And that's the way it was going to be. And we were excited about it. ESPN, 4 p.m. Friday time slot. We were thrilled. So I walked in there as Handsome Stranger, and when I got there, there were the two heels were talking to each other. I mean, the heels and the babies were in the same locker room. And I said, wait a second. You guys can talk before you wrestle? And they go, yeah. I go, oh my God. So I figured out, I literally, from the last match as Fabian to the first match as Handsome Stranger, I was pretty damn good. Cause I was already getting better, but I just couldn't quite figure out that little piece of magic I was missing. And the piece of magic was communication with the guy you're wrestling just a little bit. And that made a world of difference for me. So from that point, I started getting really good, really fast at Global.
Yeah. So now, you know, talking about that, you know, you have a little bit of a different situation too. I find it fascinating because a lot of these guys who become wrestlers, they have this story of, I came from a really really tough background. I come from the streets.
Right.
You don't really have that, but
No.
you do have a situation where, like you said, your parents did have, you grew up kind of with a silver spoon, but then they went broke and you had to
Yeah.
deal with that, which is a completely different deal. Tell us about like what you as a kid and going through that, what that
Well,
experience was like.
yeah. How I explain it is, we were spoiled rotten, but we were
Mm,
not spoiled brats. We
mm,
we were told we were going to be somebody. We were going to be leaders. We were going to be powerful. My father was a self-made millionaire at 37 years old. Him and my mother both. My father didn't graduate high school and was again self-made millionaire at 37. And ended up going to the He's in the NHRA Hall of Fame. Steve
mm,
Bagwell is his name.
mhm,
National Hot Rod Association Hall of Fame. That's a big deal. He was a
mhm,
leader as well, and we were going to be leaders of some kind, and we all were. We were the quarterback. We were the best player. We were the best boxer. We were the best as we could be at everything, and that ended up being usually at the top.
mm,
But our father was a great, and mother was fantastic role
mm,
models for power. Like
mhm.
I said, we were spoiled, but we were not spoiled brats, brother. We got our keys taken away, or the motorcycle parked, or whatever. But I did not come from the digging and scratching, but I came from a father that made us earn it and work for it. And to this day, our work ethic is great from that. My two brothers are very successful in the car industry, and I'm very successful with the pro wrestling. But it came from a really sporadic, hey, here it is, brother. But the raising that our parents gave us, I really feel got all three of us ready for life.
Yeah, it's interesting. The reason I bring this up is because my kids, I have four, and my kids are they have such a different life than me. I mean, I grew up, my parents were great. I've shared on here a lot that my dad dealt with addiction pretty much my whole life until about the age of 17, and then he's been clean ever since. But now, I'm an attorney and I've been very successful and all these things, and I have my kids, and I don't know how they get the grit that I had to have, because I had to have it to get where I
Right.
am, and they're not necessarily going to do that. So perhaps, what would you say is, like, you obviously have that grit. What was the one thing or a couple of things that your parents taught you that you feel kind of molded you into the person that excelled like you did?
I believe that I think my mother and father both made such a good team at everything
Mm,
I'm getting ready to talk about, and that was being the best at whatever you were doing. I mean, the
mm,
best you could be. But we didn't get told, do the best you can. We got told, do the best. But I really believe that it's about just the way you're raised. I mean,
mm.
if I was messing around doing something I wasn't supposed to do on a baseball field, which never happened except maybe once. My mom would come out and whip me on the field. And
Oh
you
wow.
didn't do that no more. You learn not to do that. So
Hmm.
again, that may have happened once, but who wants to get whipped on the baseball field twice? Nobody
Sure.
does. But it was that kind of leadership and power that my mom and dad showed us. So we saw two successful people dedicating their life toward a building supply company. And so we understood checkbooks and money and bills. And I learned more staying home at my house with my father and one
Hmm.
day than going to school for a week.
Hmm.
Learning things like thermostats and how to water the tree properly and the chlorine in your pool and keeping things clean and filters changed and gutters cleaned out, and just the things he taught me, life lessons he taught me, showed me that it helps me to this day. But I call it rolling your sleeves up. No matter what you do, you've got to roll your sleeves up at it. If your job is a fireman, then you got to roll your sleeves up at being the best fireman you can be. By
Hmm.
whatever you're doing, it's just not going to come to you. You got to get in there and you got to roll your sleeves up and really go after it. I mean, for example, after this weekend, I was in Memphis, and then Wednesday I was in Connecticut, and after I got home, I text every person that I work for and tell them thank you, and that's called rolling your sleeves up. I was thanking them for having me and staying in touch. And that is the example of rolling your sleeves up and doing something, that nobody else or very rare people do. And that is respect and doing it the right way. So no matter what you're doing, whether it be for your body and protein and carbs, or you're a lawyer that's doing your job with lawyer and computer work, you got to get in there and you got to roll your sleeves up to be successful.
Yeah, it's interesting because my son, he's about to graduate high school. He's about to go take on the world, and it's interesting because I had a real struggle with him a couple of years. I mean, he was a freshman during COVID. I kind of attribute some of that to that, but it was interesting because I noticed he was really good at going after it when he wanted to, but like he wasn't real good at going after it like that when it was something he didn't want to do. And I just think that it's interesting because I feel like successful people, and maybe you can comment on this, like they do the things that they don't want to do just as hard as the things that they want to do. You know what I mean? So maybe what like you mentioned earlier, like it took you a while to get it in wrestling. Do you think that part of the reason you were successful is because you just kept working at those things you weren't real good at that kind of got you there? Or what was it that you think made you successful when others aren't?
I believe that, again, to be a pro wrestler, the things that went with that, from diet to weight training to shaving your body to tanning to all of these things that it took to be a pro wrestler, you got to go after it. And still there's life, there's bills that are due, and things got to be done at the house, and there's a marriage, a relationship. It's very overwhelming. So the best thing you could do is you got to realize that this is not just going to come to you. So it's about being regimented. I was extremely regimented, and I still am. I got a calendar of what I'm doing, and I've got overall notes. I got overall notes of what's on my mind, from car wash to going to whatever it is, to working out, to a body part. And then I got this big sheet, and then over on little bitty stickies, I put what my day is, and I do it before I go to bed. So when I wake up, I literally know what's number 1, 2, 3, and 4 on my list that I'm going to get done that day. And if I don't get them done, you just make that on the next day. But every night before I go to bed, from going to see my dad to going to an AA meeting to going to work out to tanning, it's on my sticky and it's numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's the order. I go get it done. And by doing that, I go after it. That's an example of rolling your sleeves up. Without that dedication, you're not going to make it. You're just not going to be successful in anything. It's about being dedicated and rolling your sleeves up, though, in several things. Like, it takes several things with pro wrestling. It takes, you got to be in shape. You got to be good mentally. It's diet. So every morning for 40 years, brother, and not to exaggerate, every morning for 37 years, I get up, and the last thing I want to do is put food down my throat, because I'm not a hungry person in the morning. But for 37 years, within 1 hour of waking up, I have either 50 grams of protein down my throat by a shake or 50 grams with eggs. And that's for 37 years. That's the dedication it takes. Everywhere I go, there's a protein shaker and container of protein in my girl's car, and my car, and with me. So anywhere I go, there's no excuse. I've got a protein shake. That's the kind of dedication it takes. And I cross the T and dot my I's in everything I do. I'm not halfway on nothing. Well, no matter what it is, I do it right. And I believe that came from our parents.
Wow, that's the thing is I do find that the people who are most successful tend to be incredibly dedicated to their goals, and it sounds like that's where you were. Tell me
Yes.
now, I'm sure there's a ton of wrestling fans that are listening to this. Give us what's one of your favorite stories from maybe traveling down the road, or something that makes you laugh to this day that happened in the back?
God, there's so many, man. So I'll tell one. Okay, so I've told this one before. but it's a really good one. So Sting and me are on the road together, and I was first starting to travel with Sting, and we're at the gym, and I burp out loud at the gym.
Mm-hmm.
Sting goes, bro, you can't do that around me. I go, oh. He goes, that's embarrassing, bro. People heard you. You're in here with me. He goes, you're in here with me. That's a reflection on me, brother. And I was like, Sting, I was humiliated, and I don't normally do that anyway. He got on me, and man, I was devastated. So we got back to the hotel, and I told him I was sorry, and I was never going to burp out loud again in my life. So I get to the hotel room, knock at the door, open the door up. It's Sting, and it's me and Eric Watts are splitting a room with Sting at the Marriott in the concierge level. And he goes, I got cookies. And I was like, oh my God. So I reach in the bag to get a cookie. He has pooped in the bag, and a cookie is in his own poop. And I was devastated. A guy that just got on me about burping has took a dump in a bag and got a cookie in it. And he has no idea the streets I come from, brother. I mean, I was a rich kid, but we do all the dirty tricks. So I was like, oh, brother, okay. I said, okay, I see where we're at. So ironically, I had to poop real bad before bed, but I held it. And the next morning at Marriott's, when you're at the concierge level, they leave a USA Today in front of every door. So I go out and look, and he's got his paper out there. I sneak over, get his paper, put it on the ground. And in case you ever want to do this out here, you got to face the toilet because you pee when you poop. So I open the paper up, facing the toilet. I poop in the paper, and I pee in the toilet. I push the paper back down, and I put it in front of his door. And me and Eric Watts are laughing, and we're all, we go down to breakfast, and I knock at his door, and I go, hey, brother, see you downstairs. Okay, brother. We go down the elevator. We're laughing. We're at the table. And we were doing a lot of Valley Girl stuff during this. Like, oh, my God. And gag me with a spoon. And he just would laugh so hard when I would do that character. So he would do it, too. And he looks at us at the table, and he does his face like Valley Girl. And he's like, and he goes walking. And he comes over to the table. He's got the paper in his hand. Now I'm starting to realize again, oh, my God, what have I done here? This is Sting, and he's holding a big poop in that paper. And as he's walking, it's kind of walking kind of crazy with the paper. Well, it goes like this, and poop goes across the table, and it's dripping down glasses. And I go, Steve, put the paper down. Now I'm realizing I've messed up. I've gone too far. And he goes, oh my God, you guys are farting over here too. And I go, you're holding it. Put it down, bro. And so he's like, what? And then finally we put it down and we start busting out laughing. But the poop thing went on all weekend. He pooped in the dash of the Cadillac, and it was a poop-filled weekend.
Oh man, and the thing is, there's people who aren't wrestling fans listening to this and they don't get it, but I get it.
No,
You know what I mean?
no.
Yeah, when you're traveling like that, lots of weird things happen. You know what I
And
mean?
keep in mind, we didn't know what a beer was. We didn't know what a pill was. It was about weight training, and we're going to be the best pro wrestlers we can be. When you put men together like that and you take addiction out of it, we get bored and things happen. So that's what happens which is a lot of fun, but it can get a little out of hand.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned you didn't know what a pill was or a beer was, and at some point in your career, that became a part of your story. So
Yes.
tell us how that started. Did it start with an injury, or was it just kind of the road life?
I think it was the road life, simply. Just you're by yourself. You need a little something extra. It started off like a cigarette. I needed a cigarette. I never smoked a day in my life, but when I hear smokers talk, that's how I feel. Taking a couple of somas and drinking a beer was taking a big, deep breath. And it was harmless to us. We would go and take 2 or 3 somas and drink a beer and just laugh, and we would eat, and you go to sleep, and you wake up and you feel like 100%, and you can do that every single day. And it's so much fun. It's just like a mild cigarette, no harm, no foul, and you get up and do it all over again the next day. And that slowly became 6, 10, 15, 30, 40 somas a day over the next 5, 10 years. And it was 40 somas every day for the next 20 years. And again, with the leash of WCW, I was able to juggle it. I was in incredible shape. Yeah, you can eat, you can train, you tan. It's a much harder to do, but the addiction is so strong, you squeeze it in there. I made it about a reward to me. It was a reward for the day that I had done. So at 6 o'clock, at 6:01, I am ripped. I am tan. I am shaved. My house is immaculate. My cars have oil changes. My sticky pad of notes is completed. And it's time to smoke my cigarette. And I did it successfully for years. And then one day, that WCW leash was off. And when it did, 6 o'clock went to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I was I would wake up and just reach, before I got fired, I'd lay over and just call the place and, call the front desk and have beer sent up. And then when that leash was gone, brother, it just got earlier and earlier. And it was 24/7. A big part of my addiction also was from sleep apnea. I didn't know that I had sleep apnea. There wasn't a word for it back when I had it in 1982. So I didn't know I had an 82. I was just a really bad snorer. But when I got diagnosed with it in 95, I looked back on it. It was like, oh my God, I had that since I was 12. So me feeling bad as a kid and not being able to, and feeling always tired, I got hooked on drugs kind of early on the word fix it. I felt like I had to fix it when I was young on the way I felt. So I kept fixing it my whole life. That's the way my parents, that's the only kind of blame I give my mom and dad was if we started getting sick or something, they would shove pills down our throat, man. It was always about fix it. We got to fix she put Neosporin on her broken arm. But it was about fixing it. I mean, she fixed it. And so I learned to fix myself. And I was tired, and my father gave me cocaine to do to play football. And it was okay to me because this is what it took me to play. But I learned a horrible lesson by doing that. I learned to fix myself to adapt. But I didn't know it was trying to fix sleep apnea. But in that process of fixing it my whole life, they finally, atrial fibrillation happens, and I've got sleep apnea. Well, they cardiovert your heart to fix your heart. They give you a CPAP mask to fix your sleep apnea, but they can't fix me swallowing 60 pills a day. Right. So fixed, but I'm addicted to pills. So now the rehab started. So I tried several rehabs, 4 or 5 of them. And then finally I have a car wreck that nearly cripples me. The other car wrecks I didn't listen to. This one I hurt myself, and I was mad at myself for hurting myself. So on this one, I finally got sober, and now here I am, 21 months sober.
Wow, man. So now there's a few things I want to go into of that. First of all, let's go back. I know you have a great relationship with your dad, it sounds like, but you mentioned him giving you cocaine to go play football.
Yes.
Did you ever have any animosity towards that or talk to him about that now that you're sober and looking back on that and think, man, wish you hadn't done that, or have you even talked about it?
Absolutely no animosity at all. I believe even having to do it over, you think, well, just go to the doctor. But the doctor didn't know. I mean, we did go to the doctor, and he didn't know. He's like, oh, he's snoring. There wasn't a word called sleep apnea. We didn't know that by laying there all night long going when you're sleeping, because nobody sees you. Now my friends would all go, oh my God, you're horrible. You're snoring horribly. But truth be known, when it happened, my father fixed the problem, bro. It worked. It made sense to me. It didn't kind of work. It worked. I did a little bit of cocaine and took a speed pill, and then I went out and scored 2 touchdowns and threw 3 touchdown passes. So it worked. It made me awake for the problem. I didn't go home and do more. It wasn't a chase to it. That was coming, but I didn't know it. So looking back at it, I have nothing. It was a horrible thing that my father did. But what if he wouldn't have done that? What would we have done? Would I stay tired through the next 2 years of my sports? 2 years of sports in high school is a lot. Now, for some reason, I remember I didn't do it for baseball. So I don't know why I had a little bit of energy for that, but I was always tired. I mean, I could sit down and literally just go. I mean, I fall asleep. Now, when I was up, I was going, but not good, you know. So it was something that definitely I look back on. And I mean, my father did it out of love, and he was trying to help his son. He saw me struggling, and it did fix the problem. So no animosity.
Yeah. So now, also another thing, I noticed that, one of the things that I think is interesting is the people who I know. There's a lot of people I've known in my life who suffer with addiction, and a lot of them, it's either one of two things. They tend to have an addictive personality because they're just creatures of habit. And you probably are that. I mean, if you're going to the gym 6 days a week for 37 years and eating 50 grams of eggs for 37 years, you definitely have a habit part of that. But then also some people use it as like kind of an unhealthy coping mechanism. They're coping with things that are struggling. Do you feel like part of that, it sounds like also part of it was you were coping with just the rigorous lifestyle that a wrestler goes through. Would that be accurate?
Absolutely. Both those things are 100% accurate. I got a very addictive personality. A really good bodybuilder that's very regimented really makes a fantastic drug addict. I was extremely regimented. It's really hard to find a good body guy that's a pillhead, because every pillhead knows you've got to have an empty stomach to get the effects. So every morning, coming off of 25 years of not sleeping good, I couldn't wait to take some pills and drink beer in the morning. And I deserved it because I didn't feel good and I didn't sleep good. I could take these pills, feel good, get my meal in that I'm never hungry for, and then take a nap and then go to the gym. But then the whole process started over again with the regimented. It was workout, cardio, empty stomach, second party of the day. And then it was eat after that. And then it was go take a nap, digest, 3 hours, and the third party for the day. 3 parties a day, 10 to 12 somas each. And the lower tabs with it, 3 or 4 lower tabs with those 10 each time equals 40 lower tabs, and 20 lower tabs and 40 somas a day is within 5 or 6 of each one of those every single day of my life for years with a case of beer.
I gotta ask, it's funny. It's like, you probably don't know, but like, how are you alive? Like, you know what I mean? Like, how is that possible to do that long? Is it just that you're just a grinder and you can get through it?
I don't think so. To answer your question, of course, you said the right thing. I don't know. But I will say, I can tell you what I think is pretty accurate. I was searching. I wanted something to be wrong with me, so I would stop. And my liver count was normal. I felt incredible. I looked incredible. It worked for what was going for me. It worked. Finally, I get atrial fibrillation and diagnosed with sleep apnea. So again, now the plan I'd had, okay, my heart's fixed and my CPAP is fixed, but now what do you do? So I only went to 2 rehabs, one of them being the successful one, only 2 rehabs total with a CPAP and everything figured out. And one of them, I got testosterone flu at it. And if you ever heard of that or seen it or had it, it's the most devastating thing I've ever been through. It's something that basically shuts your system down. You get too much testosterone, and it's called testosterone flu. It is the worst flu I've ever had in my life. I lost 25 pounds doing it
Wow.
at risk. I went to rehab, going through withdrawals of opiates and alcohol, and I had testosterone flu at the same time. But I didn't
Wow.
know it until when I was you're in there fighting it. You don't know. They finally see that it's going on. So I tried to get clean and it didn't work. Then the car wreck several years later, and I finally got clean. But it's just, to me, looking back on it, there really was never a time that I regret that I didn't get clean. There was always something that was undiagnosed or something uncanny that kept me in my addiction, like me going to figure out my sleep apnea. And the first sleep study I did, they told me I was normal. And I went, what? My wife, I said, my wife she's right with me. She's like, he's dying in his sleep. The test is right here, ma'am. He's totally normal. So I go, keep in mind, from that test to your second sleep study is a whole nother year of addiction, a whole nother year. So finally, it comes back again. We got to do it again. There's something wrong with me. My wife's crying when we wake up. I go to the sleep study, totally normal. So finally I go, look, I'm dying in my sleep. So they go, well, how do you go to bed at home? And I explained it to them. So we figured out that by me coming to do the test sober, I don't go to bed sober ever. So they go, come down here, how you go to bed at home. And I was like, okay. So Somas, Xanax, and I walk in with a large pizza, eating a pizza. I lay down to go to sleep with 1,000 wires on me, and in 3 minutes they come in and put a mask on me and finally diagnose me. But that's a small example of how hard it was for them to find out what was wrong with me. And I was trying. I thought going there, not drinking and not taking a Xanax, I was trying to do the right thing, and I was doing the wrong thing. I was doing exactly the wrong thing. And so that's the kind of stuff that I think people come along and just don't quite know. And then before you know it, another couple of years had gone by, but finally you get diagnosed with all the right stuff. And they finally found out I had severe sleep apnea. 60 times a night I wake up. And from that, I got a thing called atrial fibrillation, which is your heart don't beat evenly. So they that cardiovert your heart back to evenness. And then they give you a CPAP mask. And then, okay, thanks for those two things. But now how do we fix the addiction? And that was many years of struggle.
Yeah. So now you've been sober for 21 months, and tell me what's it like? And I mean, you were addicted for so long. Do you feel like it's like a new lease on life, or do you regret it? Like, do you kind of wish for it, or how do you tell me
Man,
what it feels like?
the biggest word of all is freedom. It's freedom from the prescriptions and when they're due and the doctors and alcohol and making sure Sundays there's not a dry county, and it's just the freedom of not having your addiction just opens up so many more things, and God becomes much closer in your life, and it just to me there's three things. There's God should be number one in everybody's life, but God number one, my body number two, and then my partner is number three. And everybody has to get two or three things to fill that void. That can be any three you want. And no matter how hard you fight for it not to be, God should and will be not one of them. He'll be number one. And God needs to be number one for everything else to work out. But that's truly the word freedom from the addiction, the handcuffs, the chains off from having to be in prison with. I couldn't go nowhere, brother. I couldn't go nowhere without making sure that I had pills and alcohol with me, because I would be going through withdrawals, sweating and digging and hurting. And I was no fun, but I was fun if I had my pills and alcohol. But then that just got to where I was just sloppy everywhere. It just slowly gets you. Sometimes it gets people fast. Sometimes it's slow. And for me, it was slow. You never could have looked at me. You never could have looked at me and thought that guy's a drug addict. But I was. And then at the
Yeah.
end, you could see that I was, and I was slurring everywhere. And it just slowly took over your life like it does. And it creeps it and takes it over. And from that, man, I've just got a whole new life. I mean, nobody guaranteed me that it would be better. But I see that now that I have done it, I can guarantee you, if you do the steps that are right in front of you, by go to rehab, you go to aftercare. That's the big one I didn't believe in. After 30 days, you go to a 90-day aftercare facility. Then you work, then you do 90 meetings in 90 days. You get a sponsor and you work the steps. You do those 5 things and you will not hear somebody doing those and saying, you know what, my life sucks. It's not going to happen because this program works. The sobriety works. Recovery is the best way. I can guarantee you your life will be better sober. It's up to you on how high that percentage is.
Man, that's awesome. And let me ask you the part about, I know with AA you have higher powers. Have you always been kind of religious or spiritual, or did that come with sobriety?
No, I was always a very God person. My power is definitely God. Jesus Christ died on the cross for my sins at the age of 33 years old. And Jesus, by him dying on the cross for our sins is, we got to believe that and accept it in our hearts. And if we do believe that and accept it in our hearts, then we are in the Lamb's Book of Life and we will go to heaven. That is a personal relationship that you and each and every one of us have got to have with God. And it was always there, even though I wasn't from a godly family. We believed in God. We feared God, but we didn't know that, Jesus was his son and Jesus died on the cross for us. We didn't quite know all of it exactly, but it's not complicated. It's very simple. Jesus died for us and he wants you to believe him. If you believe that story, then you go to heaven. If you don't believe it, you go to hell. It's pretty simple.
I've noticed, I've actually done interviews with guys like Nikita Koloff and other guys as well.
Powerful.
Yeah, he is quite amazing. His story is
Yes.
amazing. I noticed that you, Sting, Nikita, a lot of these guys have kind of become, they're very Christian oriented. Do you keep in contact with them and do you guys work together ever? Like you mentioned Lex, he's another guy that's kind of converted too. Do you ever work with these guys or kind of share the testimonies with each other?
We were always together coming up through it. Like, Sting was with me, Sting and Lex. We were the three amigos, man. And so we were taking the exact same pills, exact same alcohol intake. But Sting was going to California and he was going through, problems at home. And so his was airplane boredom and relationship problems. I remember Sting coming to me and Lex and giving us his pills. And me and Lex were like, all right, we got his pills, Two positive news. Sting's going to quit, but we got him and we're okay. We're good.
Yeah.
Sting's the one that's got a problem. Well, we're wrong. We all had the problem and didn't really see it. But no, we don't stay in a lot of touch about it because it's just like high school. You try to stay in touch and you want to. It's just life is busy, man. Sting's got kids and he lives in Dallas and oh man, it's just, Luger's right here with me and we stay in touch regularly, but he's got his own church and he's got his following and he stays busy too. So we talk regularly, but seeing each other very rare and, but love each other and know that we're all for the same thing, working for God, witnessing, passing the word for Christ is what Sting does and what Lex does. And it's what I do and Nikita as well. He's just a great, great guy. And Nikita and Lex do a lot of stuff together. And but Sting's just so busy. It's just been a little tough to get him with he's doing something all the time. And it's but every time we get a chance, we do share. But it's something we each share a part of, and that is God.
Yeah, man. I was just thinking to myself, I'm like, man, getting the 4 of you guys together in some sort of summit would be actually pretty cool,
It would be great. It'd be kind of expensive.
Yeah, I know. That's
not for me.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I want to ask you a little bit about your short stint in the WWE,
Please.
and what do obviously it was very short, and you were the first kind of WCW main event, and it didn't really work out. Now I was on my mission, and when you're on a mission for the Mormon Church, like you don't get to watch TV, so I missed the beginning of all that, which I'm so bummed because as a wrestling fan in the '90s, that
Uh,
was like the thing. I had a buddy who was like a big wrestling fan who was like in there, and he would fill me in, and I was so frustrated that I was missing this invasion angle, right? And I
right.
heard that you were in the main event, and then it didn't go so well, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
it's
And
horrible.
so, why do you think it worked? What ended up the way that it did? Was it animosity with the WWE guys, or something else?
It was a combination of things, but it really boiled down, really truthfully, just to it. It was anybody that hears the. First of all, let me say I love the WWF and I
Hmm.
love the WWE, which was the WWF. I love them. I love Shane McMahon. I love Vince McMahon. I love wrestling. Vince McMahon is a genius, and I would have gave anything to work for Vince McMahon. So I want that to be known that I'm just telling a story that happened to me. This happened to me, but I'm not complaining about it. This is something that I want everybody to know. This is 24 years old,
Hmm.
but this is just what happened to me. But I want everybody to know this is just my story. But I love the WWE. Uh, so when they brought me in, the real quick, real simple, they had a match in Tacoma, Washington. The next week was Atlanta. Now, right here, most everybody, all they got to hear is this part and they're okay. But there's a lot more to it than that. But I'll tell you this way. In Tacoma, when we were the main event for Monday Night Raw for the invasion, why wouldn't we just wait 7 days? Now, me and Booker don't want to ask that because you will get in trouble, but we're talking about it and we know that ain't good. Well,
Hmm.
they had also gone to Booker without me knowing and said, don't shake hands, just get in the ring. So you add that to it. Then you add, they had Stacy Keibler as the ring announcer.
Mm.
How many times she ever done that before?
Right.
Never.
Right.
Then you add to the equation, Arn Anderson is at ringside doing commentating.
Mm.
He's never done that before, ever.
Right. Right.
So then you add Shane McMahon coming to me at the go position and going, don't look in the camera. As soon as I saw Shane, I looked for a set of eyes that could see him talking to me because I knew it wasn't good. And not a soul was around, of course. So I went, Shane, that's all I do, brother. He goes, if you look in the camera, you're fired. So
Mm.
roll that temp and roll that match back if you want to, and see how many times my eyes look in the camera. Zero, because I was
Mm.
told I'd be fired for it. Now, after you watch that match, I want you to go back and look at the next 10 matches that Buff Bagwell was in and count how many times I look in the camera. And it's
Right.
probably over 100 times.
Hmm.
So I didn't look in the camera. I was thrown off my game. Booker was off his game because he wants to shake hands or anything. We go out and do a match that mechanically there is nothing wrong with. You don't see us trip. You don't see us stumble. You don't see a bad punch. You don't see any glitches at all in the match. And for some reason, everybody, not everybody, the WWF called it a bad match. So fans did. And I was like, but it's not a bad match.
Hmm.
If that was a bad match, somebody needs to be fired every
Hmm.
single week. Who gets fired over a bad match?
Right.
I'm not sure, but I did supposedly. And also, I was never fired. They never said the word fired to me. They told me I was released. And I
Mm.
raised my hand and said, what is the difference of those two things? And they
Mhm.
said, if we fire you, we got to redo your contract. If we release you, we can bring you back in 3 months.
Mm.
Now, I knew that didn't make sense when I heard it, but they acted like it did. So I stood up smiling and started shaking hands. And I
Mm.
called them back in 3 months and 2 weeks. And they
Mm.
acted like I was crazy for calling them. And I said,
Mm.
Jim, I just called back because I knew it was over. I'm just calling back because y'all told me to. Thank you very much. Click. And I tried that call about once every 2 or 3 months to Johnny A's for a year or so, and then gave up.
Wow.
But to me, anybody can see those facts. It was a year of podcast before somebody went, who gets fired over a bad match?
Right.
It's like they brainwashed the wrestling world. I mean, who gets fired over the 2 rumors I heard I got fired over? They didn't tell me. The rumors I heard were bad match and my mother calling. Who gets fired over their mother calling? And why would I have my Conrad Thompson asked me this a couple of weeks ago. He goes, so here you are, you've got an agent and you're Buff Bagwell. Why would you get your mother to call for you? I go, exactly. I wouldn't. And if I did, so what? Who cares? Hey, Bagwell, tell your mother not to call us anymore. I never heard that, or I would have done so if she did so. Hey, Bagwell, that was a horrible match. Tighten up or you're out of here. Didn't hear that. I was fired, brother. Excuse me. I was released. I was released for nothing. Now, if they would have released me for slapping Shane Helms, for taking somas, for drinking beer, hey, right here, guilty as charged. But that's not what I see, and that's not what I heard. I heard bad match and my mom calling. So I've got no idea what happened, except I lost millions of dollars. Millions. If you take my last contract at $500,000 and times it by 20 years, that's 10 million. Pretty simple math. So that's a lot of money, brother. I can promise you, I would have been there for 20 years because I'm a survivor, brother. I fix it no matter what it is. And I thought, even though I knew I was addicted to pills and alcohol, if they would have came to me and said, fix it, Bagwell, I would have fixed it. I had no warning, no caution sign, no nothing. I didn't get warned. I didn't get a slap on the hand. I got fired, brother. Again, sorry, I got released. So I didn't know. I didn't have time. I couldn't even fix it. I couldn't even fix the problem. Everybody else I know that's had problems with them, they get several opportunities, several chances. Buff Bagwell did not have a second chance. And that's sad to me, man, but I hate that. I'd give anything to be underneath the WWE umbrella. I love World Wrestling Entertainment. I love this, man. I love wrestling. But, man, for some reason, they did not like Buff Bagwell.
It's crazy, too. That whole invasion angle, like I said, I came in. I didn't get back until June of 2002. And it was pretty much kind of almost over already. And just seeing, I mean, they had a chance to have you there. They had a chance to get some of these other guys there. That kind of they really didn't have many of the big names from WCW. It was almost kind of doomed to fail from the beginning.
It really was. And, again, the reason why you saw Booker, Buff, and Dallas first was because our contracts were up. Pretty simple math. Our contracts were up and we had to go TV. Now, I could have sat at home about another month and got paid, roughly 60 grand. I remember it close, whatever it was, my check was close to around 60 grand. So I gave the WWF 60,000. I said, look, I didn't give it to them. I said, you ain't got to pay me. I saved them $60,000 and said, I'm coming on board. I'm a team player. My agent, Brad Small, said, that is the smartest thing you've ever said or done. This is great. So we do it. And then I main event 1 week and fire the next. Release the next.
Release the next, man. Well, listen, we're about out of time. I know you have a hard out in an hour, and I appreciate that. I wanted to just ask you, if you could give a message to people who are listening, maybe it's somebody who's dealing with addiction, maybe someone who's kind of trying to make it in the business or something. What's one thing that you would hope would be your message to people out there who are listening to Buff Bagwell?
Man, that's a tough question. The one thing I would say is you've got to love what you do or you're not going to do it well. You're just not. It's got to be something that you are prepared to dedicate your life for. Anything you do in life, you've got to be able to really go after and get it, or you're not going to be successful at it. But to do that, you've got to love it. I mean, like just like recovery, I love recovery. I love Christ. So I work at those things to be better at it. And the better I work, the better it is. No reason. And it's like that with everything. The better the better that I do my protein, the better my diet is, the better I look. The more I engage with AA and recovery, the better my life is. The more I pray with God and go to church, the better that relationship is. It's about rolling your sleeves up and getting down in the trenches and being dedicated at whatever you do. And because it's just not going to come to you. And if it does come to you, it ain't going to stay unless you roll your sleeves up.
That's so true. I do a lot of mentoring for younger attorneys or people who are in law school, and I always tell them, if I had a choice to hire the hardest worker or the smartest guy coming out of law school, hardest worker every time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You give me a friend that gets beat up in every fight, but he's able to stand up for me over the guy that ain't got any nerve that can fight. And I want the guy that's got the nerve, brother. You know?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Show me the guy that's working.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure. Let's do this again. I would love to do it again.
I'm easy to find and love to do that. I love talking about stuff like this, and it's just a great opportunity to spread the word to me for God and for my sobriety. It's just a great platform to do, and I love life, and I love Christ, and I just like to get out here and tell people what I've done and how I did it. And the saying is lead, follow, or get out of the way. And for years I took that as lead or get out of the way, but the saying says lead, follow, or get out of the way. With recovery, you find somebody, you follow them, and you'll be successful.
Awesome. I appreciate that. For those of you who listened, real quick, where can people find you if they want to look you up?
MarcusBuffBagwell@gmail.com. MarcusBuffBagwell@gmail.com. My website also is MarcusBuffBagwell.com. Go there to get all my platforms and social media and check it out, bro.
All right. And for those of you who listen, follow Buff the stuff, and also, keep listening to us. We got a bunch of exciting things going on. Buff, like I said, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. I've also got a new podcast out. It's called Buff in Stuff. Buff in Stuff. And it's on Twitch and YouTube. Check it out. It's on Sundays live at 6 p.m. every Sunday.
Awesome. Right on, man. Well, we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much.